Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Lone Vic and welcome back to my channel. Today we are diving into a how to play of Beyond the Sun, a game from Rio Grande Games. In this channel, in my series of how to play videos, I mix it up a bit. I sometimes present newest arrivals from Kickstarter and the freshest games. Sometimes I'm coming back to the games that have been on my shelf for a while now for different reasons. And for choosing Beyond the Sun for this video, I've got, well, three reasons. One, I like this game very much, and I haven't played it for quite a while right now because of all the new arrivals that I have and all the games that I need to test and learn. The second reason is that there is a lot of confirmed information right now that we will be getting an expansion to this game this year, finally. So it was a very good reason to get back into this game and refresh it to myself even and do a little crash course on the rules. And the third reason is that once I got back to this game, I reminded myself of how difficult it was in the very beginning to wrap my head around everything that's happening in this game, not because it's very complicated, but because the rules and the rulebook are very peculiarly explained, let's say. I'm not saying that it's bad, but, well, it requires a lot of attention. So hence this video of Beyond the Sun, and I hope that if you don't have the game and you take a look at this video, you may be interested in purchasing the game, finding the game, because it's a worthwhile addition, in my opinion, to any shelf, especially if you like very original mechanically strategic games or economic games. And if you already have the game or are trying to learn it as we speak, maybe this will help you make the process easier. So in this video, we'll be talking about a multiplayer game because Beyond the Sun is a game for 2 to 4 players. The expansion, from what I've heard, might introduce a solo mode, but for now it's not in the box. And we'll be talking about how to set up the game and how to play the game once it is set up. If you like what I'm doing here on my channel, if you would like to support what I'm doing here, you can click the like button under the video, hit the subscribe and ring the notification bell to be notified about new videos coming to my channel. You can also leave a trace in the comments below the video if you have any questions or any comments about the game or the rule explanation that I did here. And if you feel like it, there is a link in the description to the video if you want to buy me a cup of coffee. And right now, without delaying this any further, because it was a very long introduction, let's dive into the setup of Beyond the Sun. Okay guys, so the setup. As you can see, I've got both of the boards provided with the game already on the table, and this is the main board. This is called the technology board, so you place it in the middle in easy access to all players. And the first thing you do after that is you take the level 1, level 2, level 3 and level 4 technology cards. You sort them into their respective decks, as I'm doing it right now, give each of the decks a good shuffle, and then take the level 1 technology cards and distribute them randomly into the 4 spaces marked with level 1, like so. And this will be the beginning of your tech tree and will always be a bit random because of this order. The 2, 3 and 4 decks should be placed somewhere near the board for now, face down obviously, and they will be placed onto the tree when needed. In the box, you also have level 2 and level 3 event cards. And what you do with both of those decks is you go through this event card deck and you find the 2 event cards with these light borders, as you can see. So this is the Tyler Lee Entrepreneur Prodigy and Maya Chaturvedi the Visionary. I hope that you can see the difference in those borders over here. So you take these 2 cards and you select 4 random cards from the remainder of the deck. 1, 2, 3, 4. You throw in all the rest of the cards to the box. You shuffle the 6 that you've selected, so the 4 random and the 2 with the lighter edges, and randomly distribute them face down on the level 2 spaces of your tech tree, like so. You do exactly the same for the level 3, so you look for the 2 cards with the light edges, like this, and you add 4 other random cards into the mix. You return the rest back into the box, give this a good shuffle, and distribute them randomly on level 3 spaces. Now, the exploration board, which I've placed here, has a number of players requirements in the bottom corner. So this is the side for 3 or 4 players, and the flip side is for a 2-player game, and I'll keep it as a 3-player game because it's a bit larger. You locate the deck of system cards, which also are divided into 2 stacks, A and B, and with the deck A, you locate 4 starting systems, which are marked with this word start at the top. I hope you can see it. So there should be 4 of those. There we go. You give them a good shuffle, and you place 2 of those starting systems face up on the A spaces of the board. The remaining 2 starting systems get shuffled back into the A deck, which is placed in easy access to all players. You shuffle the B deck of system cards and place 2 systems face up on the B spaces of the exploration board. The rest goes near the board in easy access to all the players. Finally, the last deck is the achievement deck, and here again you have to look for the 2 achievements with a different border. This is Empire and Transcendence, and those 2 achievements are always in play, so place them somewhere nearby. The rest of the achievements should be divided into 2 decks, A and B, and you add 1 achievement from each deck, so 1 from deck A and 1 from B. The rest can go back to the box, and you add them to the set over here. And those will be your 4 achievements for the game. Now, the only common resource in Beyond the Sun are these ore crystals that are provided, and you need to place them somewhere in easy reach of all the players. I will place them somewhere where they won't be interrupting the game explanation too much right now. So over here in this corner, take the 4 guild cover tiles and place them on the technology board, covering the corresponding guilds. So for example, the Professor's Guild will cover this space. The Technocrats Guild is going here. We've got the Meta Science Guild over here and the Terraforming Guild over here. If you are playing a 4-player game, then this basic spacefaring field is okay for you. But if you are playing a 3-player game or a 2-player game, you need to use these cover tiles on the basic spacefaring space. I will put them back in the box right now. The starting player marker is self-explanatory. Give this to the starting player, however you decide who it is. Provide each player with their faction mat, and be wary that each faction, as you can see, United Nations of Sol, has 2 mats, one of them basic and the other one advanced. So decide what kind of game you want to play, and each player should have the same type of mat. Let's take the basic one for now. I will place it here so that it's visible in the screen, but you know, each player will have their mat in front of them. Each player chooses their player color and places their action pawn near the basic spacefaring action. So in a 4-player game, there should be 4 pawns over there. Each player takes their food production discs and places 1 on each of the indented spaces on the population growth track, like so. Then do exactly the same with the 8 production discs of your color, but you obviously place them on the lower ore production track. The 8 achievement placeholder discs should be placed next to the player's faction mat. Each player takes all of the dice that are provided with the game, and using the supply side of those dice, so the one with this box or cube symbol, places 1 die in each of the spaces on the columns A, B, C, D, E of their player mat, like so. In this way, players should be left with 3 dice, which they use as follows. Take 2 of the dice and, using their population side with this little human symbol, place them in your resources, and take the last die and find the symbol with the spaceship with a number 1 next to it, and place this spaceship on the Sol system on the exploration board. Now, the first and the second player in the clockwise order receive 1 ore into their resources, and the third and the fourth player receive 2 additional ore into their resources. So, as the first player, the orange would get 1 ore. And finally, each player reads all of the information, especially in this box on their faction sheet, carefully, because whether you're playing with the basic or the advanced, each faction is still a bit asymmetrical. The advanced, obviously, more than the basic ones. And now, your setup is complete and you are ready to start playing a game of Beyond the Sun. Now, one note is that I didn't cover the expert variant of the technology tableau here. These rules you can read up on your own in the rulebook, and if you have any questions, you can ask them in the comment section. This is the basic gameplay explanation here, ladies and gentlemen. So now let's continue with a basic overview of the gameplay of Beyond the Sun. In a game of Beyond the Sun, players will be using their resources from their player boards, such as population or spaceships with various power from 1 to 4, marked by different sides of the same dice, in order to do mainly 2 things. The population will be generally used to access and invent new technologies on this tech tree, and the spaceships will be used to travel around space, colonizing different systems. Victory points will be gathered in many different places throughout the game, such as accessing different technologies in the tech tree, collecting achievements, colonizing the systems in space, and also from things that you do on your player board. Now, the game ends once 4 achievement markers are placed on any of the achievement cards over here, no matter what player does it. So 4 stars of any color on those cards means that the end of the game is triggered. And for a 2 or 3 player game, you need only 3 achievements in order to trigger the end of the game. And we will get back to the end of the game later on, but for now, let's talk about a basic game turn and what possibilities do players have in Beyond the Sun. So the game of Beyond the Sun runs clockwise, starting from the player with the first player marker, and it is continued over an indeterminate number of turns until the game end trigger, which is the amount of achievements stars over here, as I've mentioned previously, is fulfilled. After that, the victory points are tallied and the winner is determined. And during a player's turn, there are 3 phases: the action phase, the production phase, and the achievement phase. And the action phase, the first one, this is exactly the meat of the game. Because in the action phase, each player, depending on whose turn it is, takes their player pawn, this hexagonal one, and places it on any 3 hexagonal space that's visible on the board, which means the hexagonal spaces on the basic spacefaring space over here, or on any of the cards that you have on the board if you have access to that technology. And now, before we talk about accessing the technology, let's discuss the basic spacefaring actions and find out what we can do with those. So, in order for you guys to see it more clearly, I will zoom in on the basic spacefaring tile for a 3-player game, which differs from the one that we have on the board only in the number of spaces available, but all the effects are basically the same. So if a player is placing their hexagonal pawn on any of those spaces here, that means that they are performing one of these actions. And during their next turn, they will have to move their hexagonal piece onto a different hexagonal space and thus usually perform a different action. But if there is a separate hexagonal piece available on the same action, you can move there and perform the same action again. So the rule basically is that there has to be an empty space. Your marker cannot stay in the same space on your next round, but it can be moved to another free space that's not occupied by any other player, effectively. So this first action allows you to gain access to a level 1 technology. So if you place your marker here, you take one of your population cubes from your available resources and you place it next to any technology of the first level. And in this space, there can be one cube from every player, and those cubes mark that these players, they have access and they can benefit from this technology. Now let's take a look at a sample technology card. Now some cards will have only gray spaces for actions, and some will have a gray space for action and an immediate effect, as you can see here, and some will only have an immediate effect and nothing else. So what does that mean? If I gain access to this technology, like I did right now with my orange cube, I would immediately gain one ore, and I could upgrade one of my ships by one level, meaning that I could take this ship over here and flip the die to a strength of 2. And then I would be able to use this gray space with this effect of trading one ore into upgrading one of my population into a level 2 spaceship and getting a jump of 3, we'll get back to that in a moment, and I could use this space on my next turn when moving my pawn. Similarly on this card, as you can see, you have only an immediate effect and nothing more, so this effect would be triggered only once when getting access to this technology, and then it would be, let's say, obsolete. You wouldn't do anything else with this technology after that. So this is basically the first action. So accessing level 1 technologies. You can access some of them or all of them over the course of the game. It depends on your strategy. The second space, as you can see with this third hex, if you want to occupy it, because this is the only 3-1 costing you 1 ore, this means that you have to pay 2 ore in order to do the same thing, so placing your population onto a technology, but for a level 2 tech. And this has a few restrictions. So let's talk about those right now. As you can see, level 2 technologies are not available right now, and there are event cards over here. So in order to access a level 2 technology, you have to follow a simple rule. As you can see, those lines over here, they show that some of those spaces for level 2 are connected to a single level 1 technology, like for example this space is connected to this one with this line, or this space is connected to both this and this space. So in order to perform this action that I've talked about a second ago of accessing a level 2 technology, you need to have access to all of the pre-required level 1 technologies. So in this case, I need to have access to this one, and I have it, but if I wanted to place a technology here or invent a technology here, I would need access to both this and this technology first. So let's say that I'm going for this one because this is a legal movement for my next turn. So what happens is, if I checked that I have the access, is first, I obviously pay the 2 ore cost. I take my population and place it here. I flip the event and resolve it. And this is usually some kind of an instruction of choosing something or adding some achievement or doing. They are usually very clear and the rulebook explains them very well. I won't be going through all of these cards because each of them is very different. But an example here, as you can see, choose a level 1 starting technology, so one of those on the left column, and starting with you, each faction who has not researched it may research it now with a resource, with a supply resource instead of a population, and gain its benefits. And any faction that already researched this technology chooses one of the following instead: gain 2 ore, or change 1 supply into a level 2 spaceship. And we'll be talking about those effects in a moment. So you resolve this effect and you usually discard it from the table, and then you draw cards from the corresponding technology level. And you have to look at the arrows or the colors of the tech that's leading to the tech that you are discovering. So right now, a red technology is being linked here. So what I do is I uncover tech cards from level 2 until I find two that have a red prerequisite. Then they can also have other prerequisites, but I'm interested only in red because this is red. So this is one. This one has no red prerequisite, so it goes to the bottom. This one has no as well. And this one has a red prerequisite. So those are my two technologies. And now I take a look at those two technologies. I choose one of them. This one would give me an access to an action which could generate me ships and allow me to jump. And this one has an immediate effect and also gives me a jump. So I would choose one of those, place it here, place the other on the bottom of the tech pile, and I already have access to this level 2 technology. Now, if I was inventing a technology in this place, then I would be looking for blue or red technologies. So hypothetically, if I was over here in this space and I had access to this already, I would be drawing 1, I've got blue, so this is okay for me, and 2, blue and red, even better, and this would be my choice. So only yellow and green wouldn't fit if were drawn. And similarly, there would be also technologies that would allow you to invent level 3 techs, and this goes the same way. You need access from level 2 first, and then you resolve the event, draw 2 cards that match the colors, and you place one of them, and the same goes for level 4, but as you can see, level 4 does not have an event, but level 4 technologies have a various number of victory points attached to them and some special conditions that if you meet, you can earn more victory points from those. So they are pretty interesting to reach. So this is the second normal or basic action from this board. Now the third one is an optional changing of one population into one spaceship and then jumping 2. And now let's talk about this. For this, we need to move to the exploration board right now. So as you can see, the exploration board has systems connected with lines from Sol into deep space and to some other systems as well. So if I am changing, let's say that I had some population still left here, if thanks to this action from the basic spacefaring, I have the option of changing one population into one spaceship, this spaceship always starts on Sol unless I have access to any other system with a shipyard, which is this solar sun symbol, like you can see here or here also. If I have access to those, my ships could start from those shipyards instead. But in order to benefit from those shipyards, I need to control that system, and we will get to control in a moment. And then I have a jump of 2 according to this action, which means that I can move one ship twice along the lines on the board or 2 different ships once along the board. Now, after I move into a system, the first thing I do is I check system control and build an outpost if I can. Each location on the exploration board with this food or production symbol can be controlled during the game. And it is controlled by the faction with the most powerful fleet. So if I enter for the first time into these 2 systems with my jump of 2 and nobody else is there, I am controlling those systems. And if another player moves here with a strength of 2, I'm still controlling it because you have to have a higher strength than I currently have. If I leave this system that I was controlling and nobody else enters here, I still control this system, but now it requires only 1 strength to take this control from me. And when a player gains control of the system, they must immediately build an outpost in that system by taking the leftmost population or production disk, depending on the symbols. So for example, here it would be a population, so a food disk, and here it could be either or any of those disks. So taking it off of the board and placing it on that system to represent control. If I lose control, this disk comes back to the rightmost empty space on my board. So right now, I have control over two systems, and I will colonize them using two population disks. If you ever run out of disks and you need to mark control, you can use the star achievement disks as placeholders for those. And now some of the systems also will have a symbol, and I will try to find one right now to show you, a symbol like this, which means that whenever you take control, so whenever you place your disk on this system, you may or you are allowed to do this action. So in this case, I would be allowed to change one of my supply into one spaceship once I place a production disk on a system like this. And this effect launches every single time the system changes ownership as well. So remember about that too. This is called a system bonus. Since we are still talking about the systems, let's talk about the colonization of the system. So if there is an action already available, one of those hexagonal spaces, to colonize a system, first you need to determine the eligibility for colonization. So I will again zoom in on a card for you. Let's use the same one again. So there are two requirements in order to colonize a system. First, you need to control the system. So your fleet has to be the strongest one here, and you have to have your token over here, one either the food or the production token. The second requirement is that your fleet has a minimum strength of this number that's printed in this gray space here under the colonization word. So this has to be equal or stronger. Now, if you have those requirements met and you use a colonize action from any source on the technology board usually, the first thing you do is you need to return to your faction mat the amount of ships that will equal to the strength of this colonization requirement. You can also return more if you want, but this is the minimum that you need to fulfill. And about using the dice from these columns and returning them to those columns, we will talk in just a moment. If there are any other ships, yours or any other players left after performing this action, they are exiled into deep space. And then you take this system card for you and you place a new system card from a corresponding deck onto the board. And once you place this card next to you, you are allowed to place an additional production or population disk of the same type that the planet requires, so you will have two of them on this card. And you gain the bonus printed on the bottom of the card. Sometimes it's an immediate bonus, sometimes it gives you victory points for the end of the game. And basically that's it when we are talking about the exploration board. So you will be just forcing your way through those planets and those systems, trying to dominate as many as you can. Now, I've talked a lot about getting new ships based on population or different things that you can do with the dice. So let's focus for a moment on those here. Now, whenever a game effect tells you to change your supply into population or into a spaceship, what you do is you take one of the supply dice from the leftmost column which has dice available and you flip it to the side with the appropriate symbol, population or any strength of a ship, and you place it where you should. So for example, if an effect tells you that you need to change one resource here into one spaceship and place it in deep space, then that immediate effect would mean that I would take one die from here and place it over here. If this column is empty, then you have access to this column and then here and then here and then here. Now, for example, in a colonization action, if it was taking place and you needed to get your ships back from somewhere, or some action would tell you that you need to get your population back from somewhere and change it into supply, you would fill in the spaces on those columns from right to left as they are available. So those columns would be coming back. So this is how you change those dice into different ones. Now, there are a few other effects that I need to talk about in this action phase as well, because they are also related to what's happening on the board before I go into the second and third steps of the turn, but those will be a lot quicker, and then we'll be talking about scoring and ending the game, so bear with me. One effect that happens on those cards of technology is automation. Now, whenever you have an automate effect, it will tell you to automate food production or automate ore production. What that means is that if I had, for example, automate 2 ore production, I would take 2 ore discs from the ore production track and place them on the leftmost empty spaces of the automation track. Similarly, with food, if later on in the turn I would have to automate 1 food production, I would add this token here, and they are going until the end of the track, scoring me victory points at the end of the game. And if I reach the end of this track and I need to automate more, each additional level would give me 1 victory point each at the end of the game, and I would just stack those tokens over here. So to reiterate very quickly, during the action phase, you have access to 4 of those effects from the basic spacefaring, and you can place your marker on any of those. And I didn't explain this last action because it's very, very simple. Just spending 1 supply, so taking 1 of your leftmost supply dice, changing it into 1 population and gaining 1 ore. And you can repeat it, as you can see, as many times as you want without even moving your pawn from this space. Those spacefaring actions, the actions on technologies that you have access to because you have your population die next to those. You can use jump to travel around the exploration board. You can then control different planets and different systems. You can colonize them if you fulfill the requirements of being in control of a system and also having enough strength in this case, and collecting the cards and getting those effects as a result. And you can also automate your production of food or ore. Now, one thing that took me by surprise in the beginning of my first playthrough, and then when I came back to this game sometime after a break, were those 4 tiles covering those guilds, because nowhere in the instruction could I find a sentence about how do I remove those in order to uncover these action spaces below. And these are related to those 2 events in both of those decks that are those light bordered events. So once you uncover an event from this column or this column, you will gain access to one or the other of those guilds, and those effects are always present. So if you are wondering how to get to those, this is how exactly. So after the first phase, so after moving your pawn and performing an action, whichever it is, you go into the production phase. And in the production phase, you choose one of the 3 options on your player board. You either produce your population or your ore, or you trade resources. Sometimes some game effects will allow you to use more than one during one production phase, but usually this is how it is. So if you choose to grow your population, you take a look at all those spaces that are uncovered below the columns, and this is your population range. And for each column that you have access to, if you have dice left in those columns, you change 1 supply into 1 population. So those 2 columns are accessible for me. This one is not, because I still have a population to a food token here. So from these 2 columns, as you saw, I removed 1 supply from each and changed them into population. If, however, let me return those, I decided to not go into population growth, I could choose ore production, and this would tell me that for each uncovered symbol over here on this track, I would gain 1 ore. So in my situation, I would gain 2. Or if I didn't want to do this, I could trade resources and I could repeat those trades in any combination, and also as many times as I want, spending free ore to change one supply into one population, exchanging one ore to change one ship into one population, so basically returning my ship and placing a population here, or killing off one population, so returning it to the rightmost empty space on my column as a supply in order to gain one ore. And after this decision is done and the action is performed, the third and the last phase is the achievement phase. And in the achievement phase, you can announce that you fulfill a condition for an achievement and place one of your markers with a star on the leftmost space on that card if there are more than one, because sometimes an achievement has only one space. And each achievement slot can only be occupied by a single disc, and each player can have only one disc on each card, so maximum of 4 if you are that good. And once an achievement is claimed, your disk stays there even if you lose the requirements later in the game. You've already claimed it, so this doesn't really change. And if you fulfill a condition for an achievement, you must claim it. You can't voluntarily skip this phase in order to prolong the game for any reasons. And obviously, the achievement can be claimed only by the player whose turn it currently is. And the last, most important information piece about the achievement phase that quite often can be forgotten but shouldn't, during the achievement phase, you can only claim one achievement per turn. So even if you fulfill the conditions for 2 or 3 of them, you can only fulfill 1 per turn. And that's it. So now let's talk about the game end and the scoring and where do the points come from. So triggering the game end, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, happens when there are 4 achievement markers of any player colors on these cards, or 3 in a 2 or 3 player game. And once these 4 discs are placed, finish the current round, so up until the last player before the starting player, and then play one more full round. And in this round, achievements can still be claimed and triggered, resulting in more than 4 discs being placed here. But then after this final round, everything gets scored and the winner is the player with the most victory points. And where do you get the victory points from? First, you look at the technologies to which you have access to, so the technologies where you have your population die next to. Each level 1 technology that you can access gives you 1 victory point, level 2 technologies give you 2 victory points, level 3 technologies give you 3 victory points, and level 4 technologies, if you have access to them, give you a different number of victory points depending on the technology. Sometimes a technology or an effect can enable you to have a private technology, and this will be a 2 or 3 level technology card. So depending on the level, you will get a corresponding number of points for that as well. Now, factions also score based on their automation track, so on the range that they filled in on those spaces, and then 1 extra point for every token in a stack over here. Factions also score points for their colonized systems, so for all of the cards that they have taken off of the exploration board, and you have the victory points in the lower left corner. Each faction scores 1 victory point for each of their uncolonized outpost discs on system cards or shipyards, so like those discs that mark control over the system at the end of the game, so each is worth 1 victory point at the end of the game. And each non-controllable location, so Sol and Deep Space, so basically locations without those production or food symbols, score 1 victory point for the faction with the highest military power in each of those locations. And if any of the event cards were uncovered that provided some victory points at the end of the game because of their abilities, they are scored here as well. And then you also tally up the points from the achievements where each player's discs are. And you total it up, and the player with the most victory points wins the game. Whew, okay guys, so we've arrived to the end of this video. I hope that this clarified how to play Beyond the Sun well enough for you to be sure or more or less confident of what you're doing at the table when you are playing this game. I hope that for people who don't know this game, it was enough to familiarize yourselves with it as well, because it's a great game and one of my favorites. If it had a solo mode, I would definitely do a playthrough, but unfortunately 2 to 4 players only. If you have any questions or comments about the rules explanation, if something is still unclear and you would like to ask a question, use the comment section, please. I will answer everything as best as I can to the best of my abilities. And for now, thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned for this game because there is an expansion coming, at least Rio Grande Games is saying so, in 2023, and I'm very excited for this. Stay safe. Thank you for visiting my channel. My name was Lone Vic. This was Beyond the Sun. If you like what I'm doing here on this channel and you would like to support me, you know where the like button is. You can click the subscribe and ring the notification bell below the video to be notified about new videos coming to my channel. And if you feel like it, there is a link in the description to this video if you want to buy me a cup of coffee. And for now, this is all from me. Stay tuned. See you in another of my videos here on my channel. Thanks very much. Have a great day and bye-bye.